Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Module 6. We're going to be UV mapping, texturing, and rendering our food can. We just finished with the modeling process of the low poly and high poly. So I would put the high poly in a layer and turn it off, and let's go ahead and get started with the UV mapping process. What I'm going to do is go ahead and set this up to make sure that's over to the side so I can see that and my UV editor. Okay, so right now this is what the UVs look like. They are incorrect at this time. So let's go ahead and just get that a little bit bigger like that and move this over. Okay, the couple things we're going to open up. We're going to open up the transform, and we're going to open up the unfold, and we're going to open up the arrange and layout. Okay, those are the three that I'm going to open up automatically. And then we're just go ahead and get started. So with the can selected, we want to make sure in poly modeling, we're going to make sure we center pivot, delete by type history, and freeze transformations. Those are the three things we always want to do before we proceed into UV mapping. All right, so let's go ahead and go to UV, and we're going to go to automatic mapping. Make sure this is reset, and then click project. All right, so there is our texture map, our UVs. I'm going to move this again over a little bit so we can see, give us a little more space here. And I'll zoom out a little bit and move it over so I have two spaces. Okay. So the top of the shells look really good. So anything that is round is UV mapped perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and move those. Okay, and I'm going to select on these rings and move those over here. So those are UV mapped properly. Okay, these guys right here, that's a different story, but we're going to go ahead and select those and move them over here, and we're going to select these guys and move them outside of the UV space. All right, so with these selected, this really helps us. We can UV map, so I'm going to right click over this, go to face mode. We need to be in face mode because in here in our perspective viewport, that's face mode. In here, these are UV shell modes. Okay. So, but I use the 2D texture space to select these UV shells, which makes it a lot easier to go ahead and UV wrap this. So with that done, I don't have to go in here and try to select them this way, which would be really super easy by just clicking off and, marquee selecting. But there might be instances like, what if I want to select all these? Well, you can by selecting all these. And that would be very difficult to do by hand. Okay, so just don't forget that you can select faces after you do automatic mapping to kind of isolate those particular UVs you want to actually UV map, or those parts that you want to UV map. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go to face, select the faces, and then go to UV and go to cylindrical mapping. Edit reset, of course, always reset, and there's the UV map for that. I'm going to go ahead and scale that down. We're not quite sure what the textile density will be for this scene, but let's go ahead and move that out of the way. So that one is completely UV mapped properly. Okay, how do I know that? I'm going to go ahead and click on checkerboard and select it, and it is. Okay, by looking at what we have so far, it looks pretty good. Okay. There's a couple things we're going to do, and then we're done. Believe it or not, this is going to be one of their easiest UV maps. All right, so I'm going to go in here. I am going to select, go to face mode. I'm going to select these guys. And these are all broken up into pieces. And they're not quite evenly UV'd. So we're going to go to cylindrical mapping on this as well. So I'm going to, once we have those selected, we're going to go to UV, and we're going to go to cylindrical. Okay, it's already set up properly. The only problem is with this, it kind of placed all the UVs on top of each other. Okay, so to do this correctly, I'm going to go in and go to UV shell and select the UV shell one by one, and move them up. We're just going to go ahead and select these shells and move them up like that. And then we have one more shell, I think, right there. So we have 4 shells. So what are those 4 shells? They are the outside rim and the inside rim on the top and bottom. Okay. These shells represent the top rim and the bottom of the rim. Okay, underneath. Okay. So you can see all that. What are we going to do for textile density? That is the question. And why would we use UDOM tiles? Because we'd waste so much space. Well, it's not really wasting. When you use UDOM tiles, it uses just one UV space, and they combine them together. Yes, it does take more memory, but it doesn't take any more space, and there's no reason why not to use them. But some people would say, well, you're wasting so much UV space and that kind of thing. But really, in UDOM tiles, it's okay to do that. It's all right, and that's what we're going to do. But normally for a can like this, we would just do one UDOM tile, but because it's so small. But we're going to go ahead and just do the best we can with what we have and get these kind of set up for UDOM tiles. That's like we have been. And we want the label to be by itself because we want the rest of it, the can, to be reflective, and we want the label to have a label texture on there. So we just got to keep that in mind as we're laying out the UDOM tiles, that each material have its own UDOM tile. Okay, so you'll keep that in mind every time you guys do that. I want to keep lots of little space, but I do want to make this a little bit bigger so it does fill that space up as efficiently and effectively as it can. We're not wasting too much space. We do want to have a little space between the UV shell borders. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go under the transform, and then at the bottom we have textile density, which is get and set. We've already talked about all that, so I'm not going to regurgitate all that information. So I'm going to click on the get, and that's going to be 28.5481. We're going to actually set the textile density to the largest piece. So we're going to go ahead and select this guy right here, these. And I'm going to shift select. Now we need to be in UV shell, of course. So I want to make sure that I was. Okay. Now I'm going to go in here and marquee select this group and then shift select this group and click on set. If it doesn't work for you automatically, then do one at a time if you have to. Okay. Because we've had some students that have had some problems setting the UV textile density on all the pieces at once. It just can't handle it. So we'll just do that. Now we are going to run into issues where this is going to be kind of outside. It shouldn't be. I mean, these could probably be packed properly. So I'm going to take this, move that over, and I'm going to click on these UV shells, and I'm going to click on how Maya lays it out. There we go. And are those UVs going outside of the border edges? And did it have to make the UV smaller than this? So I'm going to check both of those out to see if it works. So I'm going to go to get. It's 28 for that one, 28.5481. And I'm going to click on select these and go ahead and get. And they are a little bit smaller, but that's okay. That's okay. They're within the UV shells and they're spaced properly. So I'm just going to go in here and move those over. So that's an easy way of just going ahead and letting Maya UV pack this for us. Now we just got to be careful how we place it in here. So I'm going to go full view here. So I have a nice way of seeing what I'm doing here. I'm going to just move those so they're not touching the border edges. Make sure they're not touching each other, and they're not. So we are good. So I'm going to go and click on this guy right here and just move that in. Again, this looks like it's really close, but it is not touching that. Okay, so that's our UV. Let's go ahead and minimize that or make it smaller. And now we're going to double check with the checkerboard and look at everything, and it looks fantastic. It looks fabulous. We don't have any distortion or anything going on there. So fantastic. Good work. So now we're going to go in here and go to selection mode and select the object. Okay. And this will get, UV mapping will get better and better and easier as you learn all these little tips and techniques that I'm showing you that makes your life a lot easier. Okay, so click on UV snapshot. Make sure it's in object mode here, UV snapshot. And make sure you have set your project and you have a project to set it to. And you've got a source images folder and all those folders you need for the project. If you don't, you need to create a new project like we talked about in class. I've taken you through that over and over again. So you need to set your project before you do any of this stuff. Okay, I probably should have mentioned it before, but you can close, your UVs won't go away, but you can set your project now if you haven't, and then come back to the UV snapshot. So go ahead and pause the video and get your file set. You don't have to import anything. You're all good to go. And then come back to the UV snapshot, and then we can start. You can start again. So we need to first tell it where we want to go. So I've already got it started here, but you will want it to go to the source images folder. Okay, and you probably want to name it something like food can, right? Food can _ TX. Now I've already done this because this is one of the things that that I've been doing over and over again. So I'm not going to click on, but I will click on save this time. But you click on save, and then we want the output size to be 4096 by 4096. We need it to be a PNG file. We need the tiles to be 2 and 1 since we're using 2 across, and then 1 up. So that's good. We're going to apply and close. It takes a while to write it out. Go ahead and close this. We're all set. And then what you need to do now is you need to go ahead and go to File, Save Scene As, and you'll need to say something like whatever you want. I'm going to type in UV finished. UVs _ finished, and we're going to do this as number 4. All right, UV's finished number 4. There we go. And that's it for this video. I'm going to go ahead and delete my tapes history to clear everything up before I send it out. But you'll go in here and go to File, Export Selection, click on the option box, and we want an OBJ export. And we're going to click on Export. And I've already got like other cans in here, okay, for the export. So I'm gonna have to type in something that is new, because I'm gonna put in low poly. That's really important. Low _ poly. It's hard to see my keyboard with my microphone in the way. Low poly food can, right? There we go. Food can _ food can, and click Export Selection. Okay. And then we'll prep this for saving out the high poly. I guess I can just do that now in this video. That'll save me another video. So we're going to go in here to selection mode, and we need to place this inside of the other can like this. We need to go to the top view, and probably the best thing to do is to have your grid on. So I'm going to go to Show Viewport, and I need to turn grid back on. And let's show you what I mean. So if I have this over here and I want to have it centered, we have to have both cans centered. They're not. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Snap to Grids tool, and I'm going to select this object, make sure I'm in object mode, and snap it to the center, wherever that may be. I'm not even sure where the center is. There it is. So let's snap it to the center, and then I've got to take the high poly food can. Now I've got to do this to make sure we're in the right spot. Yeah, that looks good. And so the center, now the low poly is in the center, so we have to take the high poly and move it to the center. There we go. And zoom in. Okay, so we can see that the low poly is above the high poly. Let's go to the side view and check it out and see what's happening there too. And the low poly should be just above the high poly, and it is. Go ahead and save that out. So File, Export Selection. And again, you may want to make sure you delete the history. So File, Export Selection, and OBJ. What do I call this last one? Low poly food can low, and I'm going to do low poly food can high. So high poly. So just rename this high poly food can. So we got low poly food can, we got high poly food can. That's what we want. Export selection, and that is it. So we're done. We're ready to go into Substance Painter and Texture. All right, I'll see you there.